So, lads, I think this is another day of talking about the most delusional fan base in the history of sport, and this might be the worst thing I have seen. This might be the worst thing I have ever seen coming from the fan base of one AJ Wilson.
Did you hear about WNBA superstar A. Wilson's audacious claim that she can defeat NBA player Josh Hart one-on-one? This isn't just trash talk. It's creating a lot of controversy in the basketball community, but this conversation needs to end right now because it's absurd. Wilson isn't just any player. She's a powerhouse who breaks records and collects awards like it's second nature, but saying she could defeat an NBA pro is a whole different ballgame. The idea has people raised eyebrows and sparked heated discussions about the disparity in skill levels between the WNBA and NBA, which some have dubbed the most outrageous statement in basketball history, but it doesn't make it untrue. The reason the statement has to be made is because of idiots like the A. Wilson fan base. This statement shouldn't have to be made because it doesn't help basketball in any way. The issue is that people are actually saying that AJ Wilson would play in the NBA and that he wouldn't play for any Division I college team. What's the deal? Does Wilson have a chance, or is this just a statement to grab attention? Let's examine it. What's actually happening is that A.O. Wilson believes she can defeat Josh Hart AOS 11 in a one-on-one match. Let's talk about that. This whole thing began on a podcast with Josh Hart, and Wilson wasn't joking when she said she would win 811. Hart simply laughed it off as though he couldn't believe what he was hearing, which was that it would be like 8-11 me, but it's not going to happen. I get the ball first, you get the ball first, and she does get the ball first. She won't get back, which will be your time. You're probably thinking that's G to be your period, which is fine. I'm not saying you're going to go scoreless, but 8-11, I feel like it's pretty solid, but wait, it gets even better. Wilson didn't stop there, saying, don't piss me off. Can you believe that she wasn't kidding around at all? She truly believes she can take on an NBA player. What do you think it'll be, Josh? Josh Hart dismissed it with some classic sarcasm. Could she really do it? Let's examine the numbers and see what's actually happening. Wilson's WNBA stats are pretty impressive. She averages 21 points per game and is regarded as one of the league's best players. Josh Hart, who has played in the NBA for 14 seasons, averages 12. If Josh faced A.A. Wilson, let's face it, he would dominate and you wouldn't receive 11 points against Josh Hart if you played the 200. He even played on the USA World Championship team, which is a completely different level of competition. Josh Wilson is a very good NBA player. He was a starting 5 member on a USA World Championship team. He would literally jump in the air and dunk it if there was no contact, or if there was enough contact, he would be high enough to make an open layup. Every time AJ Wilson put the ball on the floor, he would tip it to AJ Wilson. The only way she wouldn't get the ball stolen was if he tried to back down. Josh Hart would then stand there and observe the difference. When it comes to strength, speed, and jumping ability, NBA players are like superheroes on the court. The reality is that athleticism is the most important factor in basketball. If skill were the only thing that matters, you would see a lot of Filipinos in the league. However, size and athleticism are more important, and this is where it gets really interesting. Another NBA player, Jeff Teague, entered the discussion. With some fire, he didn't hold back at all. He said that Wilson can't beat any NBA player. You might think that's a bit harsh, but he has facts to support his claims, such as that it's just basic biology, especially in a sport like basketball where it matters a lot. However, it's clear that Jeff Teague is being attacked, and this is like people don't know basketball. He also discussed the physicality of men's basketball, saying that it's just the physicality, and he's right, the strength, speed, and vertical leap of NBA players are on a whole different level. What do you think Wilson could really take on, or is this just a case of confidence gone too far? In any case, it's a wild claim that AJ Wilson would not only not be an NBA player, but she would not make any Division I college team. She is 6', center, which is 6 feet, and she is a 64 center with 0 athleticism, who I'm not sure can dunk and is a pretty poor three-point shooter. Would score against Josh Hart, would be lucky, but that's just the way things stand. Wilson may have a lot of confidence, but Jeff Teague is going to blow it away. He has some statistics that will make you reevaluate what it takes to compete at the highest level. In this debate, Teague didn't mince words when he said, so AJ Wilson can't be nobody in the NBA, might get spooked. Not one talk bench players, everybody sounds harsh, right? But Teague's got the facts to back it up. For a brief moment, Jeff Teague made a good point. Most of these guys were already stars before they ever set foot on an NBA court. He pointed out that even the bench players, not the starters, were scoring 40 points per game in high school and averaging 20 points in college. Look, do you know, it's funny because she was on the Knicks podcast and it was about Jay and Bruss and Josh Harr. She said, it's me, you play Josh Harr, who is going to win the game. He said, you're like 11 right, and they just made a hilarious joke about it. The interesting thing is that Teague is saying it's not about gender, but rather levels of play. He even said the best college players are better than Wilson, which isn't a disparagement of her abilities, but rather highlights how difficult the competition is in men's basketball. Jeff Teague is the same height as A.J. Wilson if they played to 11. If Jeff Teague played to 11, he would be the same height as Wilson. Jeff Teague was an all-star, and did you know that even Teague could defeat A.L. Wilson one-on-one? This is such an odd conversation because you don't see women in other sports comparing their athleticism to men. It's almost always basketball. It just doesn't feel right or make much sense, and that's the only reason no one would be discussing it. For example, if Serena Williams came out and said that he beat her, she'd beat Roger Federer, I'm fairly certain that Serena and Venus played against the As amazing as William is, he beat them both 6-love and said, oh, I could have been 6-love if I was trying like back-to-back. However, it's like McAndrew when Mandrew was ridiculed for claiming that Serena Williams was the 600th best male tennis player. That's not to say that Serena Williams is one of the greatest tennis players of all time, because she is, but we need to stop lying about sports to keep feelings alive. For a moment, forget about A.A. Wilson. A'ja Wilson is an incredible basketball player, but we're going to look at Cheryl Miller, who one would say would have been better than A'ja Wilson if she hadn't been injured and there was a WNBA at the time. You've heard of Cheryl Miller, right? This woman was a basketball beast. Some people say she was even better than A'ja Wilson. Her stats were off the charts, and she was sent running to the kitchen by the harsh reality check. It wasn't even against an NBA player, it was her brother, a freshman in high school. Cheryl Miller, the two-time National High School Player of the Year, received over 250 scholarship offers, chose USC, and lived up to all expectations. The four-time All-American set USC career records for scoring, rebounding, free throws, and steals, and those records still stand today. But here's where things get really interesting. Cheryl had a brother who made it to the NBA, and not just any brother, that's Reggie Miller, the one who torched. Richie Miller, who was a member of the New York Knicks and went on to become one of the greatest shooters in NBA history, knocked that Miller from downtown a few times during his career. Now imagine this one day, Cheryl decides she's going to play Reggie one-on-one. She is confident that she can defeat her younger brother, but she makes a huge mistake. Cheryl arrives at the court prepared to show Reggie who is in charge, but something happens that completely surprises her. She looks up at him, and he is no longer small. In fact, he is 67 years old. Keep in mind that this was when Reggie was still a high school student. He was sleeping in bed when I got home for Christmas break, so I said, hey man, come on, let's go play one. We went downstairs, and when I turned around, he was right behind me. I looked up thinking, can you imagine the shock? Cheryl was standing there, probably wondering, when did this happen? Wasn't he just a little kid, but she didn't back down, still believing she could take him? What happens next is the stuff of family legends. Reggie is not having it. He blocks her shot so forcefully and decisively that Cheryl doesn't even try to continue playing. Instead, she goes straight to the kitchen game over. He then takes a step back, and I manage to get to it and sort of touch it. I thought, okay, so I still got this, so I get the ball and I dribble, and I'm kind of sizing them up. After I get past them guys, I'm like, man, nothing's changed. Go lay it up, and he pins it. Caught it, and I'm looking up, and he's still there. And I just remember that I was sitting down with Mom in the kitchen. I don't remember leaving the court. I just remember asking my mom what we were having for dinner, and I never once played Reggie one-on-one. That's the real story, as Cheryl herself relates. I just remember that I was sitting down with Mom in the kitchen, and I never once played Reggie one-on-one again. Can you believe that one of the best women's basketball players of all time is running to the kitchen after playing her high school brother? Now you might be. It's reasonable to wonder what chances A.L. Wilson have against an NBA player. Cheryl Miller couldn't even defeat her high school freshman brother. We're not just talking about any player, though. We're talking about Cheryl Miller, a woman who, according to some experts, would have been the best WNBA player she had played during that time. He pinned my shot. And I was in the kitchen when I last played Reggie one-on-one. This story puts things in perspective, doesn't it? It demonstrates the significant disparity between men's and women's basketball, even at the highest levels. The next time someone talks about WNBA players competing against NBA players, remember Cheryl Miller's kitchen retreat. It's a reminder that even the best women's players have faced the league. The WNBA has amazing athletes who do amazing things, but when you compare them to NBA players, it's a completely different ballgame. When you compare A.A. Wilson to men's college players, things get really crazy. It's unlikely that A.A. Wilson could make a men's college team as good as she is in the WNBA because the men's game is just too. Here's something crazy. She is a point guard who plays center, but she isn't an elite shooter and can't guard the post or the perimeter. If she were in men's basketball, she would be a D3 rotation player, and I believe she won the greatest of all time, but that's the truth. Wilson is 6'8", which makes her a center in the WNBA in men's basketball. Imagine Wilson trying to guard a 7T. Aja is extremely talented, but men's basketball is on a different level. Some players in Ireland's second-tier league could probably beat Wilson one-on-one. That's not to disparage Wilson's talent, it just illustrates how athletic men's basketball is. And the name Colin Kyle plays for Carr cost 210 him against A.J. Wilson every single time. This is the IR second tier, and it's obviously not a jab at A.J. Wilson, who is still one of the best female basketball players ever. When all is said and done, these guys are playing in the Irish League, and she will be inducted into the Hall of Fame. However, that doesn't make the statement untrue, and the reason it needs to be made is because of idiots like the A of Wilson fan base. The guy I coached before he left our team was 60 bang on the fast break, could shoot a little bit, and he blocked everything in sight from like D1 level guards trying to gauge him on the perimeter. The WNBA is fantastic in its own right, and these women are incredible athletes doing incredible things. Comparing them to NBA players is pointless because they play different games. He likes to say that you can't talk negatively about women's basketball without being misogynistic, and apparently if you're a man, A.J. Wilson is really good. This isn't helpful for basketball in any way, and any WNBA player could compete in the NBA because their strength, speed, and jumping ability are simply different. Set women's basketball back. By the way, Jeff T doesn't have to say this because if A.J. Wilson didn't say Josh Hart disrespected her, and that's the only reason this is a conversation, then no one would be talking about this. So when you hear people discussing WNBA players versus NBA players, keep in mind that the goal is to enjoy each league for what it is, not to compare them like apples and oranges. The WNBA has great athletes, exciting games, and a unique style that is worth celebrating.